It was supposed to be the perfect family vacation, just the four of us. Me, my wife Olivia, and our two boys Noah and Lucas. We had been looking forward to it for months. Olivia had worked long shifts at the hospital, and the boys were constantly busy with school and their extracurriculars. This was the break we all needed. We had arrived at the resort in California a few days ago, and already I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. The warm sun, the clear sky, and the distant sound of waves crashing on the beach. It was paradise. Olivia was in her element, relaxed and smiling, her nurse instincts momentarily set aside. The boys were buzzing with excitement, already planning their trips to the water park just down the road. I could see the joy in their faces as they darted around the resort, eager for the adventure. I couldn't help but smile as I watched them. It had been a while since we had all been together like this. Sure, we spent time at home, but the distractions of everyday life always seemed to pull us in different directions. Here it was different. Here everything felt simple, perfect even. But that evening everything changed. Olivia had seemed a little distant, a little preoccupied, but I assumed it was just the exhaustion catching up to her. She had worked overtime before the trip after all. That night, she claimed to be tired and decided to turn in early. I figured she needed the rest, so I decided to take a walk around the resort to clear my head. The cool evening air was refreshing, and as I walked through the gardens, the soft glow of the resort's lights made everything feel peaceful. It was the kind of calm I needed to forget about work, to focus on what really mattered. But as I wandered deeper into the resort, I found myself walking past an area I hadn't noticed before, a dimly lit corner with tall trees and a bench. At first I didn't think much of it, but then I froze. There, standing in the shadows, were Olivia and Derek. I couldn't believe my eyes. Derek, Olivia's old friend from the hospital. I had met him a few times at social gatherings and he always seemed like a nice enough guy. A little too charming maybe, but I never thought much about it. I had trusted Olivia after all. She had always been loyal, dedicated to her family. But now, watching the two of them, my heart sank. They were laughing, and then, without warning, Derek leaned in and kissed Olivia. It wasn't a quick peck. No, it was deep, passionate, a kiss that made my stomach twist into knots. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was watch in disbelief as the woman I loved, my wife, shared a moment like that with another man. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. Was it a mistake? A fluke? Or had this been going on for longer than I could have ever imagined? I turned away quietly, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want them to see me, but I also didn't want to be there any longer. I felt like an intruder in my own life. Back in the room, I pretended to be asleep when Olivia came in. She didn't say a word. She just slipped under the covers, her back turned toward me. I lay there in the dark, trying to control my breathing, trying to push the image of them together out of my mind. But it wouldn't leave. It was burned into my memory like a scar. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't want to deal with it yet. My mind was too clouded with anger, confusion, and hurt. I needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. I couldn't let her see how much this had shaken me. The next morning, Olivia seemed completely unaware of my discovery. She was cheerful, asking if I wanted to join her and the boys at the water park. I forced a smile, nodding, but inside I felt like I was drowning. I kept thinking about that kiss, about what it meant, about the cracks that had suddenly appeared in the foundation of my marriage. I told myself I would confront her eventually. But for now, I had to keep up the appearance of the perfect family. I had to pretend everything was fine. So, we went to the water park. The laughter of my boys filled the air, and I tried to enjoy the day with them. But no matter how hard I tried, my mind kept returning to that kiss. I couldn't shake it. And I knew deep down that things would never be the same again. The days that followed were a blur. We kept up appearances, at least on the surface. Olivia remained her usual self, affectionate, eager to explore the resort, and always looking out for the boys. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I had witnessed. The image of her and Derek, together in the shadows, kept replaying in my mind, refusing to let me forget the betrayal. Olivia seemed oblivious to the fact that anything had changed between us. She continued to smile at me, ask how I was doing as if nothing was wrong. And I played along, of course. I had to. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to confront her without it all falling apart in a way I wasn't ready for. I spent the next few nights lying awake in bed, listening to the sounds of Olivia's steady breathing beside me. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing hour. I could feel the distance between us widening, but I didn't know how to bridge that gap without exposing everything I'd seen. So I stayed quiet. But then came the moment when I couldn't keep pretending anymore. It was late one night after the boys had gone to sleep, and Olivia had gone to bed early again, claiming she was tired. It wasn't unusual for her to do that, but this time, something inside me snapped. I had to know the truth, every last detail. I waited until I heard her soft, rhythmic breathing fill the room, signaling that she was asleep. Then, with trembling hands, I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. It felt wrong, sneaky, invasive, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to know what had been going on between her and Derek. I needed to understand how far this betrayal had gone. I unlocked her phone, heart pounding in my chest. As I scrolled through her messages, I found texts between Olivia and Derek. Texts that were far too familiar, far too intimate. She had been lying to me for months, hiding the depth of their relationship. The words jumped out at me, each one like a punch to the gut. Miss you, can't wait to see you again, and even more damning, I'm so glad we're finally able to spend time together. My head spun as I read more, each message revealing more of their secret. It was clear now, this wasn't a fling or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was something much deeper. There were references to trips they had taken, private moments they had shared. Derek had been a part of our lives for longer than I had known, and I had been oblivious to it all. I felt sick to my stomach. All these years I had trusted her completely. And yet, here I was, holding the evidence of her betrayal in my hands. I scrolled further, desperate to find any shred of explanation, any justification for what had happened. But there was nothing. Just more lies, more secrets. The truth was staring me in the face and I couldn't look away. It wasn't just the physical betrayal that cut the deepest. It was the emotional connection they had shared. The connection that, it seemed, I had never been able to provide for Olivia. I set the phone back down, my hands shaking. I didn't know what to do with this newfound knowledge. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, to scream at her, to demand answers. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, the part that wanted to believe this could somehow be fixed, wanted to stay silent. I didn't want to lose her. I didn't want my family to fall apart. But as the night stretched on, the weight of the betrayal settled in deeper. The trust one had in her was shattered beyond repair. I knew deep down that things could never go back to the way they were. The foundation of our marriage had been built on a lie, and now that lie had been exposed. I lay there in the dark, trying to process everything I had just discovered. I couldn't stop thinking about Noah and Lucas. How would they take this? What would happen to our family? The idea of breaking the news to them, of having to explain why Mom and Dad weren't going to be together anymore, felt like a nightmare I wasn't ready to face. But I knew I couldn't keep living this lie. I had to confront Olivia. I had to find a way to rebuild my life, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, Olivia woke up and smiled at me, asking if I wanted to join her and the boys for breakfast. I nodded, my heart heavy, but my face remained neutral. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. But I knew I couldn't keep pretending either. It was only a matter of time before I had to face the truth, before I had to face Olivia and decide what came next for both of us. The days blurred into one another after I discovered the truth. Olivia, ever the picture of normalcy, continued to go about her days as if nothing had changed. She laughed with the boys, helped them with their plans, and asked me to join in on family activities. But every time she smiled, every time she touched me, I could feel the lie hanging between us, thick and suffocating. It was as if I were living in a different reality from her, trapped in a parallel world where nothing was as it seemed. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when my heart was breaking. That evening, after we had dinner with the boys and they were tucked into bed, I made up my mind. I needed to confront Olivia. I needed to hear her side of the story, to understand what had happened between her and Derek. More than anything, I needed to know why she had chosen him over me, over our family. Olivia had just come out of the bathroom, fresh from a shower, when I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands clenched into fists. She noticed my serious expression, the tension in my body, and paused for a moment, her brows furrowing in concern. "Tommy, what's wrong?" she asked softly, sitting down next to me. Her hand brushed against my arm, but I flinched slightly, the touch feeling like it came from a stranger. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat, too raw, too painful to speak aloud. But I had to do this. I couldn't keep holding this anger inside. "Olivia," I said finally, my voice low, "I know about you and Derek." Her face went pale, and for a moment, I could see the panic in her eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand, stopping her. "I've seen the messages. I know what's been going on behind my back. All this time you've been with him, emotionally at least. And you never told me." My voice shook with a mix of anger and hurt, but I couldn't hold it back anymore. Olivia froze, her eyes widening. Her face twisted with shock, guilt, and, yes, regret. She opened and closed her mouth several times, trying to find the right words. But none came. Instead, tears began to form in her eyes and she dropped her gaze to her hands. Tommy, I never meant for this to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. I swear to you it wasn't intentional. I never planned for any of this. Derek and it just happened. I stood up from the bed, unable to sit still any longer. I needed space, distance from the lies that had enveloped my life. The emotions crashing over me, betrayal, confusion, sadness, were overwhelming. You never planned for it? I asked bitterly, pacing across the room. What do you mean you didn't plan for it? This wasn't some random mistake, Olivia. You were talking to him, confiding in him, sharing things you should have been sharing with me. You were kissing him. Loving him, probably. While I was here taking care of our family, thinking you were loyal. She stood up then, taking a hesitant step toward me. I was loyal, Tommy. At least I thought I was. But things weren't the way they used to be between us. I felt like I was invisible to you. Like you didn't see me anymore. Her words stung. I could feel the cracks in my chest widening as she spoke. Invisible? I've worked my ass off to give you and the kids everything you've ever wanted. I've supported you. I've loved you. And you? My voice wavered as the anger boiled over. You chose him. I didn't choose him over you, Olivia said quickly, her voice full of pain. I didn't know how to talk to you about what I was feeling. I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us. So I went to Derek. He listened to me. He made me feel seen again. I never meant to hurt you. Her confession hung in the air, a sharp contrast to the pain swirling inside me. I wanted to scream at her, to make her feel the weight of the betrayal I felt. But instead I was just numb. I couldn't process it all at once. The love I thought I had, the family I had spent years building, was shattered by a single moment of weakness. You should have talked to me, I said, my voice low but firm. Instead you kept this secret. You lied to me. And now I don't know who you are anymore. I don't know who I am in this whole mess. Olivia took a step toward me, reaching for my hand. I recoiled instinctively, stepping back. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice thick with regret. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. But I was lost. I didn't know how to find my way back to you. I thought, maybe if I just got this out of my system, things would get better. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. This wasn't what I wanted. This wasn't what I had hoped for. I wanted a family. I wanted the woman I married back. But there was no turning back now. I turned away from her, unable to look at her anymore. The tears were welling up in my eyes, but I fought them back. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Don't say that, Olivia, I said through gritted teeth. Because it doesn't matter now. You've broken something inside me that I can't fix. The silence between us was heavy. She didn't try to reach out again. She knew as I did that nothing would ever be the same. The trust was gone. And with it, so was the love I thought we had. The days after my confrontation with Olivia felt like an endless loop of pain, confusion, and betrayal. I thought I'd be relieved after finally speaking my truth, but all I felt was hollow. The air in our room was thick with unspoken words, and the silence between us was unbearable. Olivia tried to apologize, tried to explain herself, but her words felt empty. How could I believe her now? We still had a few days left in California, and neither of us had the courage to bring up what had happened again. It was as if we were both waiting for the inevitable, waiting for the point when we could no longer ignore the reality that our marriage was over. But neither of us knew how to take that next step. I spent my days avoiding her. I spent time with the boys, trying my best to keep up the facade of a happy family. I smiled at their jokes, watched them play, and pretended that nothing was wrong. But inside, everything was broken. My heart was in pieces and I didn't know how to put it back together. Every time Olivia tried to approach me to talk, I pulled away. I couldn't look at her without remembering that kiss, those messages, everything she had hidden from me. On our last night at the resort, Olivia and I stood in the hotel lobby, waiting for the shuttle that would take us back to the airport. The boys were excited, talking about all the memories they'd made, but I could barely hear them. My mind was elsewhere, trying to make sense of everything. Olivia cleared her throat and turned to me, her eyes searching mine. Tommy, she said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Can we talk? I didn't answer immediately. I couldn't bring myself to look at her. Instead, I stared out the window, watching the night sky fade into darkness. There's nothing left to say, I replied quietly. We both know what's happened. We both know that it's over. Her breath hitched, and for a moment I thought I heard her fighting back tears. But I didn't turn to face her. I couldn't. I never wanted this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I swear, Tommy, I didn't. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I don't know how to fix it, but I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I shook my head, feeling a cold emptiness spread through me. Sorry doesn't fix this, Olivia, I said, my voice thick with the weight of my pain. I don't even know who you are anymore. She reached out, her hand trembling as she placed it on my arm. I pulled away instinctively, the sting of her touch feeling like a final betrayal. I know, she said softly, I know I've lost you. I know I've lost everything. But please just know that I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. I always have. The words felt like a hollow echo. How could I believe her now? After everything? The shuttle pulled up to the entrance and the moment was over. We didn't speak again for the rest of the ride to the airport. Olivia sat beside me, but the space between us felt vast, too wide to cross. I felt like a stranger sitting next to her. We returned home, and the first few days were filled with awkward silences and forced interactions. It was like we were both waiting for the other to make a move, to say something that would make everything feel normal again. But normal was gone. The love that had once been so strong between us had withered away, replaced by mistrust and hurt. I knew what I had to do next, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. It wasn't until I was alone one evening, sitting in my office, staring at the papers scattered on my desk, that I finally made the decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that things would somehow fix themselves. They wouldn't. I had to file for divorce. The process was cold, clinical. I gathered all the evidence I needed, the messages, the proof of her affair with Derek, and I went through the motions. Each form I filled out, each document I signed, made the reality more real. There was no turning back now. But what really tore me apart wasn't the divorce itself. It was the thought of Noah and Lucas. They were the only thing left that I cared about. The only thing that mattered. I couldn't shake the guilt that twisted in my stomach every time I thought about them. How could I explain this to them? How could I tell them that their world, the world they thought was stable, was crumbling? I thought about confronting Olivia again, about asking her to help me tell them together, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The damage had been done. We were no longer a team. She had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. But before I could even begin to consider how to break the news to the boys, a voice inside me whispered something I wasn't prepared for. Are they even mine? The thought hit me like a bolt of lightning. The doubts that had been gnawing at me, the lingering questions that had never quite left, came crashing to the surface. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know. And so, with a heavy heart, I decided to request a paternity test for Noah and Lucas. The decision felt like a betrayal in itself. But the truth, no matter how painful, was the only thing left that mattered. The days leading up to the paternity test felt like an eternity. Every time I looked at Noah and Lucas, my heart broke. They were still my boys in every sense of the word. They still looked at me with those trusting eyes, their innocent smiles, their laughter filling the empty spaces in our home. But I couldn't escape the nagging thought that had taken root in my mind. What if they weren't mine? I hated myself for even considering it, but it had to be done. I had to know. If there was any chance of me starting over, of healing and finding peace, I needed the truth. Even if it shattered me completely. I arranged for the test discreetly. I didn't want Olivia to know yet. She had already caused enough damage, and I wasn't sure how I would handle her reaction when the truth came out. In the meantime, I kept up the charade, playing the role of the father, trying to be there for my sons, pretending that everything was normal when in reality, the ground beneath me had crumbled. It was a week later when the results came back. I sat in the living room alone, the envelope in my hands. My mind raced as I stared at the piece of paper. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to see the truth. But I knew I had to. With trembling hands, I tore open the envelope and pulled out the results. My eyes scanned the first line, then the second. And then the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Noah and Lucas were not my biological children. The words blurred together, but the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. The test results were clear, undeniable. They weren't mine. I sank back into the couch, numb. The weight of the revelation pressed down on me, crushing whatever was left of my heart. How had I not seen it? How had Olivia kept this from me for so long? How could she lie to me about something so crucial, something so fundamental to our family? I wanted to scream, to throw the papers across the room, to destroy everything in my path. But instead, I sat there, staring at the evidence that had completely upended my world. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my family, had been a lie. I didn't know how long I sat there, lost in my thoughts, feeling the emptiness spread through my chest. The anger that had once burned in me had dulled into a cold, hollow ache. What now? What did this mean for me, for the boys, for everything? I knew I had to confront Olivia. I couldn't keep avoiding her. But how could I? How could I face her with this knowledge, with the undeniable truth that she had kept this from me all these years? I couldn't bring myself to tell her right away. I wasn't ready. But I knew I couldn't let this linger any longer. The silence between us had grown unbearable, and now, with this new truth hanging over me, it felt like everything was crumbling faster than I could catch. The next day I sat Olivia down. Her eyes were tired and her smile was forced, like she knew something was wrong but wasn't sure what. I didn't waste any time. "Olivia," I said, my voice rough, "I need to know why. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why did you let me believe Noah and Lucas were mine?" She stared at me, her face pale. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The paternity tests," I said, my voice growing colder. "I had them done. I know the truth, Olivia. Noah and Lucas aren't my biological children. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide this from me?" Her face drained of color, and for a moment she just stared at me, speechless. Then slowly the tears started to fall. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never thought this would happen. It was a mistake. A long time ago, before we were married. I didn't want you to find out. I was scared. I thought I could keep it from you." I stood up, pacing the room as the gravity of her words sank in. "You thought you could keep it from me? For how long, Olivia? How long did you think you could live this lie, knowing that you weren't being honest with me?" "I didn't know what to do," she said, her voice cracking. "I was scared of losing you. I didn't want you to leave. So I just kept pretending, hoping that we could make it work. But I see now that it was all a lie. I'm so sorry." I could barely look at her. I couldn't feel sorry for her anymore. She had stolen my trust, my belief in her. And now she was trying to make me feel sorry for her? "I've spent years raising them, loving them as my own," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and pain. "And now I find out they're not even mine. How am I supposed to process that, Olivia? How am I supposed to look at them the same way again?" She reached for me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "Don't touch me," I said, the words coming out harsher than I intended. "I can't do this anymore. I can't look at you and pretend this didn't happen. I can't be the man you want me to be after everything you've hidden from me." Olivia's sobs filled the room, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. The truth was too painful, too raw. I had to think about myself now. I had to figure out who I was in this broken family, in this shattered life. "Thomas," she pleaded, her voice desperate. "Please don't leave me. Please. I'll do anything." But I was already walking out the door. I couldn't hear her anymore. I couldn't stay in that house, in that life, with the knowledge that everything I had believed in was a lie. The truth was now out in the open. But the hardest part was just beginning. The days after I left Olivia were a whirlwind of emotions I wasn't prepared for. The house felt too quiet, too empty without her. Without the boys. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, walking away from them, but I couldn't stay in that toxic space any longer. The lies, the betrayal, the constant pain, it was all too much. I needed to rebuild my life, even if I didn't know where to start. I stayed with a friend for a few days, giving myself time to breathe and process everything. It felt like I was drowning in a sea of uncertainty. Everything had changed so suddenly and I had no idea how to move forward. I found myself thinking about Noah and Lucas constantly. They weren't mine biologically, but that didn't change the love I had for them. I had been their father for so many years. I had been there for their first steps, their birthdays, their school plays. They had been my world, and now I wasn't sure where I stood with them. Would they even want me in their lives anymore? Would they understand why I had to leave? In the midst of the confusion, I decided to focus on something that could help me heal: my career. I threw myself into work, hoping to drown out the noise in my head. But no matter how much I tried to immerse myself in it, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, about the life I had left behind. A few weeks later, I ran into an old colleague, Lauren, at a work event. She had always been someone I could talk to. We had shared a few drinks together after work a few times, but never anything more than that. But after everything that had happened with Olivia, talking to Lauren felt like a lifeline. We talked about work at first, but then the conversation naturally shifted to more personal topics. I found myself telling Lauren about my marriage, about Olivia, and about the painful truth I had uncovered. I wasn't expecting to open up so much, but somehow it felt right. Lauren listened without judgment, offering words of comfort that felt like a balm to my wounds. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Thomas," she said softly. "I can't even imagine how hard it must be." It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't involved in the mess of my life, someone who could offer perspective without the emotional baggage. And for the first time in weeks I felt a little lighter. As the weeks passed, Lauren and I kept in touch more. We met up for coffee, shared stories about our work, and found ourselves laughing at jokes that didn't have anything to do with the pain I had been carrying. She was a good friend and I appreciated her support. But as time went on, I realized that the connection between us was growing into something more than just friendship. It wasn't anything that happened suddenly. It was slow, almost imperceptible at first. Lauren understood my pain in a way that no one else did. She had been through her own share of heartache, and we found comfort in each other's company. We didn't rush things. We took our time, letting our friendship develop naturally until one evening when we shared our first kiss. It was gentle, tentative, but it felt like a promise, a new beginning. For the first time in a long time, I felt something other than pain and loss. I felt hope. But even then, my mind wasn't entirely clear. There were still moments when I thought about Olivia and the boys, when I wondered if I had made the right decision in walking away. But Lauren helped me see that I couldn't keep holding on to the past. I needed to look forward, to rebuild my life from the ground up. And slowly I started to do just that. Months passed and Lauren and I grew closer. She was kind, patient, and understanding. She never rushed me to move on, but she was always there when I needed her. And then one day she told me that she was pregnant. The news hit me like a wave. I wasn't expecting it, but in a way it made everything feel real. This wasn't just about me moving on, it was about building something new, something that I could embrace fully. Lauren and I had created a life together, and in that moment I realized how far I had come. From the devastation of my marriage to this new, unexpected chapter, I was healing. I was ready. The pregnancy wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, of fear, and of wondering if I was truly ready to be a father again. But every time I felt uncertain, I looked at Lauren, and I knew that I wasn't alone. Together, we were building something beautiful, something that was born out of the ashes of my past. When Lily was born, everything changed. She was tiny, fragile, and perfect in every way. Holding her in my arms, I felt a sense of peace that I had never known before. I realized that love didn't need validation. It didn't need to be explained or justified. It simply existed. Lauren and I were a family now. And though the scars of my past would never fully fade, they no longer defined me. I had learned the hard way that love was a choice, that it required vulnerability and trust. And now, with Lauren and Lily by my side, I had found a love that was true, a love that didn't need to be anything other than what it was. In the years that followed, I continued to build my life, step by step, moment by moment. And as I watched Lily grow, I realized that the pain of my past had transformed into something beautiful. It had led me to where I was now, a place of healing, of hope, and of love. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that everything was going to be okay.